of the Economic Development Committee. First thing on our agenda, item number 2, is approval of minutes as mailed or emailed. I'll hear a motion.
I will make the motion to approve.
Second.
Motioned and approved. Election of officers. It's time for us to go to an officer election from, I guess this will be our first full year. Is that right?
It is.
We've been there for 1 year, and I'd like to open the floor. I don't know if it's legal if I can make a recommendation or not at the beginning of it.
You can.
I can.
Scott.
Well, I'd like to make a motion that Jessica become the chairperson of the committee, if she'd accept it.
Okie dokie.
I'll second that.
See how easy this is?
Oh, gee, thanks.
Anyone else like to make a recommendation for chairman? Close the elections, and congratulations.
Thank you. I think.
Now, vice chair, open the floor for that.
Can it be Terry?
It could be.
Could be. Or yourself.
It's not Gary, I can tell you that.
So do we, there's a motion for Terry.
Can we
Here, a
pass it
second.
even though he can't?
You can. If for some reason that he chooses not to take that position, we can vote on it again next month.
Then it would go to Gary.
There we go.
That way we pass it around pretty
Based
nice.
on those who talk the most. Maybe.
Well, the talkers will always talk, whether they're chair, vice chair, or
Right.
in line. So,
We can
Okay.
do that. We can say Terry.
all right. Well, any other nominations? Close the nominations. We'll vote on it for vice chair. Terry, I hear approval. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have a new chairman and vice chairman, and it's yours.
Wonderful.
See how easy that was?
Gee, thanks.
Congratulations.
God, I appreciate that. Is that why you did that first off? Thanks.
But now you're going to
Appreciate
sit
that.
over here? No.
Yeah. Well, the new business, I'd like to wait until Jay gets here if we could. So
Yes.
if we could skip to the old business. Tammy was very, very wonderful in putting together all of our action plan information into our minutes from last week. Did anybody have any comments or questions on the way things were changed and the way that it looks now?
No, there's just one thing I wanted to comment on, which was on page 2. It says Mr. Torres continued with item A4, which is landscaping. He felt the city does an excellent job with landscaping and that they could probably delete that item from the list. I do not take exception that they do a wonderful job, but the city's maintenance program is terrible for downtown. Those trees that are in all the bulb outs, the Washingtonia palms, in front of my store haven't been trimmed in 3 years. And I can promise you the point has been trimmed, the beach has been trimmed, and the main intersection of coming right through the middle of downtown, just, I even asked, could I pay to have them done? And they said, no, we'll take care of it. And they came in about 2.5 years ago and trimmed them. But I stood out in front of my store when the wind was blowing 3 weeks ago, and there were enough palm fronds in the middle of Route 60 blowing on the street that cars were actually stopping to go around them. And I had a cane, so I didn't feel it was my responsibility
No.
to walk out in the middle to pull them out of the street. But they actually blew all the way down the street towards the post office area. They got that far. But we're not talking about one palm frond. We're talking about 15 or 20.
Right.
And little black berries that come out every year on those trees just litter the sidewalk unbelievably. And that was the only exception I wanted to bring up. Was I didn't mean that they don't do a great job,
Right.
but the maintenance, if the downtown group or somebody needs to take over that maintenance, the trouble is it is a tall tree, it is a big palm, and
Well, I know that in the strip that Terry was probably referring to, which is the Main Street strip, the 14th Avenue between the Twin Pears, or I should say to the south of the Twin Pears, because you're between, and that area is very well maintained because there is someone that maintains it, which is the Main Street.
Well, they do most all of it. The only problem is the palms. It is
Right.
nothing but the palms that is the problem.
Is this two separate groups we're talking about as far as maintenance on these trees?
Well, the maintenance would be, the burden would be on the city for that, right, Tim? With the maintenance of the trees that are in.
Right-of-way landscaping, yes.
Right. But Main Street does a lot of their own beautification and stuff like that is done within, it's south of State Road 60 northbound to 21st Street. They've put in all those pots, they've done the hanging plants and all that
Now, they
stuff.
put them in, but do they maintain them?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they replant the flowers and everything like that, and they raise money to do that, so, but that's not part of what we do, so.
I do understand budget constraints and all that, but
Right.
the main intersection in downtown, I would think, would be a fairly high visible.
Who can we talk to about that? Is
Well,
there?
I'll talk to Monty,
Perfect.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's just that 2 blocks. There's only about 12 of them.
Okay.
And I offered to even trim the ones in front of my store because I was tired of it being tracked in.
The biggest thing too, like Scott is referring to, those berries that fall every year, and the foot traffic in that area, and
Yeah.
you're making sure that is cleaned up. Would
Okay.
that be something that was also the city if it's falling on the sidewalk, or how does? I mean,
Well, usually merchants are required to generally maintain like the sidewalk area in front of that, so I mean.
That is true. The only difference is if the trees were trimmed periodically, there
You
wouldn't
wouldn't
be the
have-
berries.
that's
And-
exactly
And
right.
that's what I was trying to refer
Right.
to. It is not the flower bed. They maintain them gorgeously.
Right.
Yeah.
Can't we just remove the berries before they drop?
Yes.
Right.
But it would take
Yeah.
a maintenance
If
program
it was-
to do
right.
that.
Right.
And it's kind of been alleviated from the maintenance program. For those trees, anyway. I can't speak for any others. Don't want to point the finger at any other. Doesn't matter. That's the section that we're contracted to maintain. And I just noticed that it was on here to say, let's take it out because they do a great job. And they do a great job. But I think the palms need to be addressed.
right. And Tim will talk to Monty about that
Yep.
and keep us posted. So we'll make sure that gets taken care of. The item number 4, which is the sandwich board sign. We've had a few people that have been fined within the district due to sandwich board signs promoting their business because either they're not within the constraint of the code as it's written today. I know just coming here on State Road 60, there's a sign for taxes, sign for the French restaurant, and the sign for Zumba right just east of 14th Avenue. There's signs all over, people promoting that, which is fine because going down the street, you can't see their signs on their building. You go by either too fast or it's on the side and you're not paying attention to it. If there's a way for it to be rewritten so that the code reads that the sandwich board sign can be placed outside of the city's right-of-way during business hours only.
It already does. The problem is people don't want to, they want to have it up by the right-of-way. I mean, we allow
There is
within.
no outside right.
Yeah, well, no, we're talking about outside the downtown area. There isn't a room
That's
in the
exactly
downtown.
right now in downtown. There isn't any.
But the problem is, you get further down the street, they're allowed to put the sign out like 3 or 4 at their entrance, and there's no permit. They want it up on the right-of-way. That's basically where they want it, Jessica, and they want to get it close out there. So, I mean, whether it's not in the right-of-way or not, I mean, but that's.
Well, for
Yeah.
instance, the business that rents that is a tenant in our building. He cannot put it within 3 feet of his front door.
And that's why you have permanent signs.
He is not allowed to get a permitted sign.
Well,
He's outside of the jurisdiction for a permitted sign.
well, no, I meant a permanent sign. You know, if
He
if-
has a sign on our building, though.
Okay. You know, I can tell you that staff does not favor doing this, but I will do whatever the policy is. Mainly, at this point in time, if you've heard what the Supreme Court and the decision on signs, opening up, allowing signs outside that area, if we keep them out of the right of way. But I think one of the things Jay wanted to do was to deal with some uniformity to the signs. Okay, so, you know, I'll do whatever I'm told to do. Professionally, I think it's bad to be doing this, okay? That's just because there's a lot of reasons. Sandwich board signs are intended for walking traffic. They're not supposed to be billboards to
Right.
stop people who are doing 45 miles down the thing. The downtown's the only area that we allow them in the right of way. And even that could be challenged. There's no doubt about it.
Could be.
That's why we try not to open these too often, these things. It's like looking at a patient, and there are problems with that patient, and you just don't want to know. But I think Jay said he had some ideas on that. So, I mean, I'm not going to support it, but I would certainly work to get it done. You guys will need, you know, your group, if that's what you want to do, is to really push that. You know, I'm just telling you up front. That's what they pay me to do. And, you know, I'll give you but I will do the best I can. The thing is that the zoning really has it right now. So we would have to create something either that includes the downtown in that area, okay? But you understand what you're opening the entire city up to this.
Well, it would just be for our district.
Yeah, but what stops that?
Tell me,
You have to understand. I mean, everybody would like to have some opportunity.
what are the boundaries for this?
The boundary
I think down to
is-
20th Avenue, going from the
Right.
downtown, isn't that my understanding?
What about east?
Oh, it wouldn't cross the tracks. It's just where the downtown district is.
This is our district right now. Hand this over, I'm sorry.
Because I've got complaints from store owners on my end of downtown.
Oh,
who
I know.
Are just frustrated.
Well, they aren't supposed to be able to do that. They're out in front of their door, and
Well, even out in front of my door, I've had the code enforcement come by and say I can't have that. Even
Right.
right outside my front door of my store.
well, you can't have it out to your door. If they should call.
The problem is that is right away, though.
No, I don't
it's
think
it's
his
on my
door. He's got
sidewalk.
parking
Right.
in front of
It's
his.
not your sidewalk. That's the whole thing. That is
No,
This is my. I'm not talking about the street sidewalk. I'm
Oh.
talking about the sidewalk directly in
The
front of my
si-
store.
right, yeah.
Yeah, the downtown is allowed to put these signs in the right of way with a permit, and that's what you have down there. You know, it's not what is intended for those signs to do because they use them to attract traffic. That isn't. It's supposed to be a walkable downtown, not billboards to take.
Well, and that's the thing, is that there are businesses,
Yeah.
such as the business that's directly across the street from us, that gets a lot of foot traffic. They get a lot of people walk from the courthouse.
Oh no,
From, you
I
know, I
agree.
mean, there are a lot of people
But the configuration of that road, that isn't intended. That's why it isn't in the downtown district. Okay, and as I said, it's part of the zoning for downtown. It's not a sign ordinance part. So for us to change it, we'd have to either create some sort of overlay. So I don't know. I think Jay had some ideas about some sort of uniformity in the sandwich board sign. So what we may do is combine that. Okay.
Well, the history of that is when they redid 14th Avenue, they dug up the road, and there was no sidewalk along our building at all, and they came and allowed us to put a sandwich board out because the road was all dirt. They had a wooden sidewalk against our building and allowed us to put a sign out so that people would see that there was a store there. And then it evolved into almost a non-approved, yeah, it's okay. That's kind of how it started. And Tim's point is, it can just get out of hand and look like a boardwalk. And I do agree with that.
Yeah, and we've had, believe it or not, because I've had an ongoing thing, you know, we need people signing identification. I've already had somebody trip on one of those signs downtown. 6 months rehab if they had sued us. But that's outside what you're talking about. And I apologize. I'm just trying to bring up the back.
But it is
So
a problem.
It is a problem. And that's my concern, even outside the right-of-way. If we start allowing these signs, what prevents, why are they any different than somebody somewhere else? That's what we get into, and then it kind of opens it up. That's the thing. It may not happen, but
See, that's what I'm getting on my side of town.
well, there, see?
I mean, I've been there 35 years, and I can't put a sign
Yeah.
in front of my store.
Yeah.
That's
You should be able, the entrance, if you have that. I don't understand that. You should show me where you put it. I'll
Okay.
take a look for you.
okay.
See, the
Because you do
problem-
have
right.
room over there. if
Oh,
I
plenty,
recall. I don't
absolutely.
understand why, as I told the staff, they're not measuring exactly, but you can tell when somebody moves it up to try to be on the right of way. It's intended for the right of way. It may be just, it's one thing to be in your entrance. They're not measuring these exactly, and they don't have time.
Well, the biggest thing is, like for
Yeah.
our tenant, for instance, they can't put it within 3 feet of their
Oh,
front
no.
door.
And there's some
It's
people
too
can't.
landscaped.
Yeah.
We could pull out the landscaping.
Yeah.
Do you want it to look nice, or do you want to, the code to be adhered to? So it's one of those things where it's a very double-edged sword. In some instances, there are businesses that are set far back off the road, like yours is, that have something in front of them that prevents somebody from seeing them because there's something here, and then there's their building, it sets back far off the road.
Yeah, well,
Because it's like yours, where
but
it
a
has
lot of
parking in
them will
front.
have directory signs and all that, and that's how you try to bring people in. If you look at most places, most of these strip centers don't have that, and that's what
Right.
you get into. So that, as I tell everybody, if you can find a way through the permanent signs to do that, that's the way it should be done, so you don't have a proliferation of signs. I mean, there are good reasons why we try, not just aesthetics, but there's traffic safety and others why we do it this way. And with the Supreme Court and sign and First Amendment rights, you got to be real careful, what you're doing on this thing.
Just a comment on that. It seems that we've identified at least 2, maybe 3 issues that are all related to speed of traffic. So I'd ask Mr. McGarry, what is the real likelihood or probability of being able to significantly slow traffic starting, say, from St. Helens Church east to the railroad tracks? Because that would solve signage issues, crossing issues. Is that a reality, or is that just the
I think the reality is going to come if we can we're already talking about going down to see if they'll change some of the signals, for the pedestrian thing. But I think the reality comes is when we can get the twin pairs taken care of.
absolutely.
But when that happens, you're going to still have a lot of parking along the street. You're not going to see these signs, are you?
Right.
So, but that slows the traffic down. And so that's when that whole area, because 20th Avenue all the way to 20th will be more a pedestrian by that time
Right.
if we're able to do that.
Right.
Is this going to go from US 1 to 20th? The twin pairs shrinking down?
No, the only thing we're talking about right now is the downtown part on the west part of the tracks.
'Cause I'm just afraid of the bottleneck that's going to happen right at that railroad track when we go from 4 to 2 lanes.
Well, they've looked at that. There shouldn't be a problem. They're talking about getting rid of 2 lane, 1 lane on the north, 1 in there.
But that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, they've looked at the traffic. There is that traffic can handle a huge capacity. It's not way beyond what it can now. It has a huge capacity for the amount of traffic going through there, and they've already looked at it, and the state has agreed that you can eliminate lanes and still handle the traffic.
Well, no, I'm talking about, are you going to eliminate the lanes from US 1 to 20th?
No, they weren't going to touch those, and it wouldn't be a problem. They looked at that during the study. If you ever looked at the traffic calming study, you should take a look at that. And we have a copy around. It might be on the website, and if you look at that, it'll show you how the configuration works.
Jay,
So the answer is the speed will be addressed when that comes, nothing before that.
Yeah, I think part of it is going to the MPO here, and we're going to get to talk about, see if we could do some speed reduction.
So there's a possibility of speed reduction
There's
prior.
a possibility for some speed reduction. That's true. So
That might address, at least until that traffic calming resolution is done, to signage and pedestrian crossings without having to tweak 10 things. It might just be 1 thing.
yeah, but at least that gives a little more emphasis for the differences in sign, rather, you're comparing that to another road. That's true.
Should our kiosks that we are thinking about doing solve some of the sandwich board problem?
Along 14th Avenue, maybe, but in the outlying areas, probably not.
Well, what's an outlying area?
Well, most of the kiosks that we had determined, those locations were along the 14th Avenue corridor. We're talking all the way from 14th Avenue to 20th. So
Well-
between, say, 16th and,
Well, in a drawing that I did, I put one right here at City Hall for an information board.
right,
One kind of by the post office because it was going to be another hub area.
Right.
But we're not sure how long the post office is going to be a hub area.
Right.
Pocahontas Park was another one, then one on 14th, and then one on the other side of Route 60 westbound in that park area, and then one to the farther north. And those would be, I think that we have discussed it from the standpoint of people would pay to go onto that sign for a location. So when foot traffic, which is what a sandwich board was designed for, not a drive-by,
Yeah.
oh, there he is, there's Joe's Surf Shop, that may help it. And it may be that we have to use those and expand our thought process to farther down where you are.
right,
Does that make sense?
yeah. The biggest thing is getting up until that point that those are actually installed. What do we do between now and then?
But that's not going to replace what these sandwich board signs do. I've been doing this a long time. Those sandwich board signs are not the same as these placemaking signs or wayfaring. I mean, you can look what they've done on Ocean Drive over there. I mean, they've got a lot of those, but then again, the traffic is it is much more pedestrian
Right.
than dealing with the twin pairs in front.
On that note, at the last meeting, we talked about making presentation at MPO, and I know Mr. McGarry was going to get some stuff together. At that time, I had volunteered to work with him to start to make that. My calendar's really stacked. I was going to ask another member if they can get with Mr. McGarry and prepare that information so that it doesn't fall.
I
Not
think
sure.
Terry said he would be willing to do it. Okay. We were going to get something together. I talked to Phil Matson with the MPO, and I think they're going to talk to their traffic. They have a new traffic engineer, so he may have a different slant on what can be done. The
That's
previous
important.
one didn't want it to tamper with the pedestrian delay
Right.
across, and that's where our main concern was. Just
Right.
because it may have, but I think FDOT has got a much more progressive look at how they're looking at streets, and maybe this gentleman has that same progressive look at
Right.
at this. So we're hoping that it will work. So I've got the meeting. We're going to do an attack meeting, which is at the end of this month. Or is it next month? I have to check. I don't know if I told Tammy. I probably forgot. Yeah.
And that's the one that one of us needs to be present at that meeting?
Well, that was we're going to have like Terry or
I'll run back up. I just didn't want to commit, and then because I got a lot of stuff.
No, I understand. I saw your email, so
Okay,
I'm aware of the situation.
Did you want to speak, Jay, at all? Regarding? The sandwich board signs or the cars?
My apologies. I came in late, so I was right in the midst of the conversation. No, the whole idea of the sandwich boards, it's been kind of a bone of contention in the city of Vero Beach for a long time. And so recently we started talking to some of the business owners and thought, well, we could use the business improvement district to relax some of those restrictions only in the business district only, so that we don't end up having to reopen this whole argument citywide, which would cause quite a lot of other injections of opinions that are probably not relevant to this area. But the whole idea is that if we could find some way of getting some sandwich boards that work for the businesses, that don't look overly obtrusive. I know some of the big white sandwich boards that we see out there are kind of over the top. But if we could just find a way to give some of these businesses the opportunity to kind of use their frontage space a little bit more and do it in a good way, I think we ought to do it. It's a good use of the business improvement district, and I think in the future, if people can realize that the business improvement district can effectively improve this area without getting all the flack from the outside areas, I think we can really be onto something.
Excuse me, Mayor. You said you mean the entire business improvement district? That's all the way out. That's all over the place, out to US 1. I mean, I thought we were just talking about down the Twin Pears down to 20th Avenue.
We can. I mean, it's up to it's up to the committee here to decide that area. But the whole idea is that we localize some of these issues in order to help our businesses.
Yeah, well, before you came, I told them I'm not really in favor of this, but I'll do whatever you all want. It's a policy decision.
But the issue is
We do respect your opinion,
Yeah.
Tim, because you
Oh,
keep
you
us out
do?
of a lot of trouble. You really do.
I mean, we could put size restrictions and,
Yeah.
the sign has to,
I guess from a business point of view, they're feeling their business is not being seen from the street.
right.
Yeah. But it'd be nice if we were to do it, to have some specifications on how the sandwich board sign. I mean, we got some ugly looking sandwich
Yeah.
board signs out there. So if we're going to do this, no matter how much I really don't want to do this, I think it'd be nice to have some standards for
The
those
other
things.
issue that's going to be coming down is that once these twin pairs go 2 lanes and you have parking, there's another thing that's in the way so that people can't see your building anymore.
Yeah, we talked about that. There, yeah.
But they wouldn't see a sandwich sign for sure.
Well, that's
But-
true. So I mean,
Yeah, it's a catch-22.
I'm kind of grabbing on your creativity. What do you do to help out the businesses and be effective and not be overly obtrusive?
Well, as we were pointing out, the sandwich signs are intended for pedestrian traffic.
Right.
So that's where they work when people are walking down the street. The problem I have, and that's why I said that these signs are really used to track off the street vehicle traffic.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something just to bear in mind while we do this. So anything we can reduce the look of these and that, it might be a little more palatable, let's say.
Once we have downtown parking, street parking, we're going to have a lot more pedestrian
Yes.
walking than we've ever had
Yes.
before.
Right.
Ever.
No,
Right.
I agree.
Jay, when we talked in my office, I thought it was from US 1 to 20th that we were going to narrow down.
On the twin pairs, yes, correct.
Okay, that's what but I just understood now it's only from the railroad track.
No, it's only really from the Twin Pairs is the downtown is where they're going to narrow it down.
Well, I mean, it's
Yeah.
we can extend that plan over, in the next when we get it on the next paving schedule. I don't know when that is, but quite frankly, I can't imagine why you wouldn't
Do it
make
all
it
at one
two lanes all the way through. It would match where it comes into Indian River Boulevard. I mean, it's 2 lanes.
Well, that's what I think will slow down traffic. I mean, if we have them coming off US 1 onto 64 lanes at 45 miles an hour, once we hit that railroad track, like I say, I haven't seen your traffic plan, but it's seeing 4 lanes going into 2 right over that railroad
But
track.
they looked at that. But I agree with you. It'd be nice to limit it, the whole thing on. But right now, we don't even have the money to do.
But it does that
It is.
now.
Yeah.
It does what?
Yeah.
It already does that.
Yeah.
At 20th, it goes from 4 lanes to 2 lanes. At 20th, at the Catholic
Yeah.
Church.
Right.
That is the same scenario as
Yeah.
the bottleneck you're talking about at the
Well,
railroad tracks or
goes
somewhere
to
else.
3 and then it.
4 to 3, yeah.
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 And then one
Well,
turns
you're not
off.
counting the turning lane as a lane then. Is that correct?
No, it goes from 4 to 3.
not
Yeah.
2. That's true.
Right.
Yeah,
I
but
just
there's a
don't
big
under-
shifting from 14th Avenue.
Right.
You have
We
3
just have
and then-
so many retail businesses on the other side of the railroad tracks that aren't getting any attention whatsoever.
It's because they're coming off that light, 0 to 60, you can hit it.
Well, like I said, we need to slow that down.
Well, I agree. I mean, that's. I think that the speed, what I'm saying is,
Yeah.
from the US 1 and the railroad tracks, if you hit the speed issue, you resolve several of the issues the
Absolutely.
committee's brought up, from
Yeah.
signage to pedestrians to
Most all.
safety. And so the question was, what can we do prior to that to slow it down?
Because narrowing the road down to
Set up
street lanes-
tickets, you get a lot of revenue. You know, put them out there with this. I'm not a fast driver; won't bother me.
I won't bother me.
Slowest guy in town.
Remember not to get behind. No, I'm just kidding. If we take the sign issue and put a size restriction on it, it can be no more than 3 feet high, it can be no more than 2 feet wide, and it can only be displayed during business hours. Like businesses that aren't open
Yeah.
sometimes have their signs out
Leave 'em.
already. Right.
Yeah, and that's not the ones we allow now without a permit have those restrictions.
Right.
And it's a violation if they leave them out.
Right.
And they're not open or, after business hours. They're supposed to take them inside, in fact.
The
Not
other
just
thing
leave
to
them
keep in
outside.
mind, remember we did the sign ordinance where you put the signs out, what was it, you put them on Thursday and you got to have them up by Monday?
But those are right-of-way signs.
Sunday, actually.
If we did something similar with that, like, you couldn't have your sign out past 7 or 8 o'clock, makes code enforcement a lot easier. You
Right.
don't have to check if the business is open. Hey, if there's a sign out there past a certain time, it's obvious to see,
Right.
pick it up.
Right.
Well, insurance seems to be something that we're skipping over with those signs.
Well, I think we need them to sign an indemnification, at least that. I don't think we're going to require a license agreement, but that's if they're in the right-of-way, okay? Anything in the right-of-way, I think that they should sign as part of the indemnification. I mean, that's, as I
Otherwise,
said.
it puts the liability all on the city.
Yeah, well, I mean,
That's not
the
fair.
city will find other people to pay for it, but you're right. I mean,
But, yeah,
we'll
that's
be
not
called
fair
at
to
any
do to the
lawsuit.
city.
You're right. I mean, they look for
Because the
pockets.
ordinance would allow it, you would be called as the first person in line also.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, whether we can, I mean, I've talked to our attorneys about it. No, I agree. And we haven't done that. We really should do that. I mean, I wanted a license agreement. I have not won that argument. And, but I think if we have them on a permit where they sign, they understand that, then they,
Should we have a permit for a sandwich board? I mean, if you want it out and then on the paperwork, these are our business hours. This is,
I think you really
that
need
way
to,
it's-
because when you get a permit, you don't have that excuse of, well, I didn't know.
exactly.
We know where they're at.
Yeah.
They know the rules.
Right.
And, I mean, we're not here
We
to make
can make
money
it
on it, but
very
we're here to make sure that
restrictive and,
yeah, I
and
think
just
a
have it-
permit would be good to have.
right.
Hit it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got to have that
You know,
permit in your
have-
window for your alarm.
Right. I mean, if they have a permit to display the sign within, their business hours, and their business hours have to be displayed on their door, as long as they have the permit, they're okay. I mean, it's, I mean, I don't know, $25, $40 a permit, I mean, I think that's a good idea.
Let me ask something. Jay, we're also talking about we probably want to get the downtown ones in line too. As I was
Right.
explaining here, the downtown ones are in a zoning district. So that's,
Right.
it's not in our sign ordinance. They're basically allowed under the zoning to do that. The area outside there, let's say if we go to 20th Avenue we're talking about,
Right.
that would have to be either probably an overlay or some other, the sign thing that we would, probably the easiest way to handle the.
well, I don't want to get it overly complicated.
No, it wouldn't be. We just do a sign overlay. I mean, it's not that complicated. It'll designate an area of which
Well,
properties could do it.
That way it'd be inclusive
Right.
all the way down
Yeah.
here.
Right.
That's what you're going
I think
for.
that's the easiest way to do it without meddling too much in the ordinance. I'll have to look at it. If we're going to require a little more for the downtown people, we may want to tweak that if we do that. But I think that'd probably be the simple thing. I mean, we're not in the wanting to rezone everything all the way down to 20th Avenue. That is just for
Right.
signs.
Right.
Yeah, doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But you're going to include them in the business improvement district, right?
Well, they would be the business improvement.
Okay, well, I thought we were thinking about grabbing a couple of properties to the west. Is that correct? Or are they
Well,
already
this
in
is
there?
the west we're talking about. That's why I asked you, talking about the improvement district,
Right.
which is fairly big. So, I mean, there's nothing east of the tracks. And, that's outside the downtown, or at least the zoning downtown.
See,
Yeah.
that astounds me because that would make City Hall not in downtown. It would
Not-
make the police
well.
department not in downtown.
Right.
It would make the patio restaurant not in downtown.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't make any sense to me. That's just-
Well, one of the things when I got here, I said, well, can you tell me what the downtown is here? That was always the question. And people have different way they look at it.
Yes,
Yeah.
I just thought it was the Twin Pairs was downtown, from 20th to US 1. I mean, that's 3 major banks that we're not including in downtown.
Well.
I just don't see how City Hall could not be considered in downtown.
Can always change.
Yeah, you can always
I
change.
think they are, aren't they?
Well, yeah,
They're
well, I
in
see
our
this-
district.
I
They're
see
not
this
in
here,
the
but I'm-
actual downtown.
Yeah, we're
city
talking about the
district.
downtown zoning district, which is a separate,
I
you know
know,
what I
I've got
mean?
that. I brought that up when we did this one
Yeah.
and say, why is this one different from what
Yeah.
I got from 20 years ago when
See,
we
what
did
I'm
this?
seeing here and what I'm hearing are two different things. This is
This is the zone that we work
Control.
within.
okay.
is that dark black
For
boundary.
tax increment funding,
Right.
all those businesses.
So it's a much larger area, as you can see.
Right. No, and I'm in that area. That's why.
Economic development zone
Yes.
as opposed to downtown zone.
Yes.
Right.
The EDZ is larger.
Okay.
Significantly larger than the actual downtown.
And we're dealing with just the downtown.
Did you want to discuss the cars?
I don't know. You're writing all this down because, I mean, keep in mind, you guys are kind of at the forefront of formulating the policy here.
Right. Well, no, the reason why we had the discussion about the car displays within the district, the same district that we're discussing now, there have been cars that are, and the ordinance was probably written way before the actual wrapping of cars was, for
that's
displays, is, traveling, to display your company. A lot of businesses are now wrapping their cars and putting logos and advertisements and phone numbers and stuff like that. Right. And they look great. They're a great form of advertisement as you're driving down the road. I know florists do it. There's a lot of them, a lot of businesses do. And that's another code enforcement issue within the district.
Now hold it. No. It is if they park it to clearly try to become a billboard, and you see that all the time. So I caution the code people when I talk to them, just keep, like if it's on the right, just move it somewhere where it's not as obvious. A lot of times you can't hide it, but you'll be surprised at how many businesses want to put their truck, their van out there with this full-blown, that's a sign.
Well, in
Yeah.
his respect, where your business is, there's
Yeah,
no
he's got-
parking spot that isn't going to be a billboard for your company.
But he's right. But he's right there. They shouldn't be. You got to be practical how you apply these things.
Right.
Yeah.
And that, that's
Yeah.
been an issue for someone that is very close to our business. They've had the same, and he's like, I can't park my car anywhere where it isn't visible from the right of way.
Well,
Yeah.
no, but I showed him where to park it. He needs to park it up by the building where he can. And so you can still see from the right of way, but it's near the business. It isn't clearly being left out. I mean, you have to understand the rules are put there to try to avoid these kind of things. And sometimes, but they've got to use common sense when they're applying it. I mean,
Well, the way that the actual code is written, the way that it was written in the code enforcement letter that was given to the person in question, is it cannot be left in the right of way for more than 4 consecutive hours in a 24-hour period. Well, if you park the car there from 3 to 5, you leave at 5 o'clock, does that mean from 9 to 11 you then have to move your car at 11 o'clock?
well, the intent, so
That's-
the intent,
you know what I mean?
he needs to work with the code officer on that very issue. I don't run code enforcement anymore.
Right.
Thank goodness.
But I wrote ordinances, and I can tell you what the intent of these ordinances are. You just got to use some common sense on that. And, I mean, the next thing, if you watch on some of these where people have these trailers with big signs on them running around, well, at least the enveloped cars are not so bad, or the trucks, as long as they're not left out there to be an obvious. And that's what I would say, is it an obvious intention to do that, or is it because circumstances have? Then they need to show some common sense.
So should I park mine in the back? I mean, I've been parking the same place for
If you
30
can
years.
park in the back, you do that. Have you been notified? No. See, they haven't. They see your shop right there and where you have it parked. I mean, I've noticed it, but I don't see that as you can see where they're trying to deliberately do that.
Okay. No, I'm just using the same parking spot I've
Yeah.
used since I've had the store. So,
Right.
But I want to stay within the guidelines, or I wouldn't have wrapped that car for $2,000.
Right.
There's no way. It's already
Exactly.
paid for itself. I mean,
Oh,
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
see, my intention was for downtown parades and
Yes.
hopefully downtown Friday to park this.
but you weren't really thinking it was a downtown billboard.
Never even.
Yeah.
No.
So
Right.
I know these are difficult to, but as I said, I really are trying to avoid going into that sign ordinance too much. With these Supreme Court decisions, you open us up to challenge. We got
It's a
enough.
bigger change than we want.
Yeah.
Is what you're
And
doing.
so if we can handle it You
Right,
know,
if
behind
we
the
can-
scenes, that's what we need to do. You know, so I'll try to work with the code people, see if we can work with that. I mean, if it really comes to something, we have to come up with something better. We'll have to do something. Okay?
Is just the Supreme Court more liberal than we want to be on sign ordinance?
Oh, they're real liberal. I mean, First Amendment is something you don't want to
First Amendment, yes.
dump on.
That's why it's the first one.
That's why it's the first one.
Exactly.
I believe we had
But
something.
the real problem is trying to figure out where the courts are going on everything. That's the problem, you know. And it's a guessing game right now on what happened in the last decision with that town in Arizona.
Tim,
Glendale.
I believe also in the ordinance, it was something about 10 square feet as far as advertising space.
Yeah.
I mean, is it such a thing that somebody could just, I know the gentleman that we were talking about had some windows. I mean,
Right.
is it such a thing that we could just reduce some of the, I know there's some parts of advertisement on the car which really are just kind of fluff. They really don't, they're not purposeful.
You don't have to have it, right?
But, I mean, is there a way that we could just reduce that, come back to a code enforcement officer and say, hey, does this get under the 10 feet rule, and this becomes a
Well, I
moot
think the
point?
10 feet rules allow you to have some signage on there without triggering this other part.
Right. Well, that's the point. I mean, is there a way? I mean,
mean,
can we just come back to code enforcement and say, hey, we took it off the windows. Here's the car again.
Well,
Is
if it gets under
rule?
the 10-foot rule, then it doesn't apply.
apply.
Great.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, but
the
these
point.
people spent $2,000 for a car wrap. I don't know if that's
he doesn't have anybody complaining about it.
I love my car. I have business people stop
But
by
it
all
would
the
be
time
code
and
enforcement that
compliment me on
decides that, right?
You know
They
what?
they are the arbitrary judge of the ordinance.
Well, let's hope they're not arbitrary. I hope they're using some
Well,
sort of. But you're right.
Okay.
They'll take it's their discretion whether
discretion. Better word.
to even enforce. They have total discretion.
Okay.
And that's why you want to keep it this way rather than putting in
I wish.
hard and fast.
And we could sit here and argue about how these rules should be, and
Right.
that's why I say try to use some common sense. And the thing about any kind of code is, I just point out, it's all discretionary. You can't force a locality to enforce its codes, generally. So you do what you can. So it's if you can use common sense, get around this, and the intent of it, that's the way to handle it. So try to do that.
Thank you.
So did you want me to look at, are we talking about 28th Avenue, or what is the
If we
consensus
can
here?
extend it from
US 1.
10th,
Oh, hey,
right
you-
now, you want to do US 1?
Oh, I'd like to go to. I don't want it to be all about me.
Right.
I'm hearing from other store owners
Right.
who are just
to come down from US 1.
exactly
All the way down to 20th.
only because the traffic on US 1 from either direction have only one turning lane, so which would lead into two lanes.
Right.
This road right here.
Let's keep it on the twin pairs if you're going to do this.
Right.
Oh no, absolutely. I just
Okay. All right. Yeah, I think I'll look at what I can do.
So US 1 to 20th Avenue on
Yeah.
the Twin Pairs.
And would you all, what I would like to do is bring this back to you all
Sure,
before it goes into the process.
sure.
As I said, I may not be blessing this, but I will certainly do the best I can for you all.
Well, we appreciate it.
we need you here regardless. So.
We appreciate your advisement.
Absolutely. I'm just hearing from so many people on my side. And I think more retail businesses would open up on that side of the railroad tracks if we had parking where people could actually get out and walk.
Right.
I think a lot of those business stores or that are office buildings would be retail buildings if they could, which would generate some revenue for the city. In the
Right.
long run.
Yeah.
Well, sort of revenue for the city. We don't get everything we deserve.
Oh, no, that goes without saying.
Not
I
on
think
sales
the
tax.
lack of foot traffic too tends to hinder the sale of that parcel that's been for sale for
Oh,
the
there's
last
no doubt about
20
it.
years.
All of those
Right.
parcels would be filled with buildings if there was foot traffic.
Right.
But just to me, what it does is three things. It beautifies downtown, it slows down traffic, and it gives us the parking we vitally need.
Right.
Okay.
And it limits a lot of those buildings that are for sale from, being used.
Yeah, absolutely.
Obviously, a lot of, we've looked to move, but, parking's the thing. I'm
Right.
not going to have clients cross that road.
No.
Yeah.
I'll
No.
lose half my clients.
Well, I honestly believe if people come to my store and park in my parking lot, they're going to go in my plaza. They're going to leave and go. But if they park just on the street outside my plaza, they would walk up and down.
Right.
I don't think they feel comfortable leaving their car in my parking lot and walking.
Right.
So.
And I know for a fact myself, it's dangerous to cross State Road 60 the way it is right now. It's
It's
very
actually
dangerous.
easier to cross where where you're not supposed to. If you stop cross at one of those lights, that's really dangerous.
Yeah, line of sight makes it easy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Helene, Harry, Andre, do you all have anything that you'd like to add? Any questions that you have for us?
You don't know until you try. You said try something. Try it.
Come up here and talk.
Hello. I don't have much to say other than I'm trying to make.
Can
a
I
living.
get
My
your name for the record, please?
Andreas Moses. I'm the owner of Mo's Family Deli. And the only thing I have to say is I appreciate everybody coming and talking about it. And I'm trying to make a living. And you don't know, like you said, until you try. Put a sign out. If it doesn't work, I'll take it down. You know, make it 3 feet by 2 feet. If it's not what you want and it doesn't fit into what you're looking for and it's not pretty, I'll take it down. But it's better than having nothing.
Is there a chance the city could actually sell one uniform sign?
I don't think
Thank
you
you.
want to be in that business.
No, not
But I
really.
think we got to be careful about putting down sizes and all that. You need to see what sandwich board sides are made in,
Right.
because there are 2 prime sizes.
Right.
The small one is just a little bit narrow. It's like a foot and a half.
Right.
It's just a little narrow, but
Right.
it may fit in someone's non-right-of-way area better than a 2-foot one.
Right.
Yeah, I think, when I bring the draft to you all, that's the stuff you can look at.
Right.
And probably be nice to have some graphic or pictures showing those.
Right.
So,
We could definitely get
Is there
that.
something that prevents
That
the
can be
sign
easy.
spinning guys? We see at different locations.
they're not allowed to spin the signs, so they're stopped. But they can, yeah. The problem with the ordinance is that we shouldn't allow them to be, they should be out in front of their stores, in their right of way, rather than 5 blocks away out on the middle. That was not intended. And we just have not, as I said, we don't really want to open the sign ordinance. That's why we haven't done anything there. But that, at least we stopped that, but we still have,
Right.
they're out there. Yeah.
Now, are they just in the city or are they in the county? I see them in the county. I didn't
Yeah.
know they were
Well,
allowed
they
in the
know
city.
when they're in the city because they can't spin the sign. So
You mean they can hold it, but they can't spin it?
they can hold it. They can't spin it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting to watch them.
I don't want one of those in front of my store,
Yeah.
whether it's spinning or not. I just don't. It's not, I don't like it.
Yeah. Well, our
Oh,
next.
there's one other thing I wanted to bring up.
Certainly.
It's the revised boundaries. Can I ask you guys? I really think it would not be a good idea at this time to do that, because if we do that, one, you haven't submitted to the council yet. We would have to expand the area. That means we have to go through we'd have to set up the tax increment districts. It'd be like an annex thing. You don't automatically move it back into the. I would just suggest that we hold off. I mean, I will put it together if that's what you want. And
You mean the expanding of our district?
Yes.
Include what was just annexed and.
well, in those areas that we talked about, but we'd have to have a separate for that, and we'd have to go through that again. And then, of course, that complicates the tax.
What are we
Kinda
talking
thing.
about? I'm confused.
Oh, they were talking about where we, for instance, you see the area, this was the boundary.
Right.
Well, this area was annexed. They wanted to add this where the Cumberland Farms is going in.
We wanted to go straight down that block.
And then
okay.
kind of take in the Kmart area and all that.
Right.
And I think at this point, this is the downtown district. You're going to get some pushback, be my guess, from
agree.
some people because you're expanded so much. How are you? It's really more than the downtown. And I'm saying at this time, but I will do whatever you all want to do. I'm your staff, but I'm just suggesting that you hold off at this point in time, and let's get the economic development plan approved by the council, and we can on that, and that would be interesting to see how that goes.
Okay.
Okay, I know we talked about it, but we haven't.
Right. Does anybody agree with Tim or disagree?
I agree
Does anybody
wholeheartedly
want
because
to?
when it happened, I thought you can't just take a pencil and draw that line and say, well, they're now in the city limits, so we're going to include you because my bone of contention always was we go all the way down and include US 1, and there's so limited things we can do with US 1 being the downtown redevelopment district. I didn't see how US 1 fit in, but it fit in for one reason. Economics.
Right.
Without them, you don't have a whole lot of economics going to come in to this committee to spend on redevelopment.
Right. I think with the amount of things that are happening on US 1 right now, I think
A lot of, yes.
Oh, it's going
The other
crazy.
thing, I brought it up to the people doing the Cultural Arts Village. I'd like to see a little more coordination going on here because they're talking about setting up an overlay district. And part of this overlay district was going to go all the way over to 14th Avenue. And part of it takes into downtown. And I said, I'm going to have to be the one that does their overlay for them. It looks like that.
Right.
And I've promised
They have
them
a
that.
meeting Wednesday. don't they?
Yes, I'll be there. And I suggest it'd be nice if you're there. But I am not for necessarily putting the overlay in the downtown district because basically the Cultural Arts Village is supposed to be a low density, low scale, 2 stories. And if you start doing that, you're now impacting the downtown where we have probably our most liberal zoning in the whole city. I don't think it makes a lot of sense. So I'm not going that way. Even though they may be recommending that. I've brought that up before, but on this kind of thing. But I think it'd be good to talk to them as they're talking about putting street lighting and all this, and you all have done the same thing. We just need to
I
kind
agree.
of work together.
right.
And I've
Exactly.
asked that they would come to these meetings, and
Right.
so.
Yeah, if we had everybody on the same page, I think.
Yeah, I think there's
Work a
enough.
whole
I
lot
mean,
better.
you've got Main Street, and that, to work together
Right.
for a common goal. I think it'd be great.
Completely. Do we have when their meeting is and where?
Oh, they're having their meeting on Wednesday at the
30 Heritage Center.
Okay.
and they're going to give their draft, their final report, and they're going to come before the city council on the 15th of March to get the council to approve it. And I've already kind of told them, I suggest if you haven't got a copy of it, I think we have it on our website. It'd be nice to review. It's it's a good document, but it's the typical conceptual thing, and
then
the
they
details
and
are
then they grow.
Yeah, and then they grow. And again, it's a matter of
It's already
function of money
grown.
for a lot.
It's
of
already
this
grown before it
Yeah.
started.
Yeah.
But they're going to come for the council, and then then the implementation. Now, the one thing I explained to them, the overlay district can't go into place until our comp plan comes into compliance, and we're still working on that. Just because there are certain changes in zoning and the future land use that have to be done to even allow this, because of the multiple districts are in. So it'll be a while before that can go into place. Okay?
All right. Do you have any further business that we need to discuss? No? Have you submitted your application?
Yes.
Perfect.
He is the new board member.
Is
Yes,
board
yes.
member. Perfect. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Charles Williams, or they call me Mike.
Okay.
I own Mr. Smokes.
Well, thank you for joining us. We greatly appreciate your time and value your input.
Thank Jay.
Thank you, Jay. Well, if that's all we have, then I will adjourn the next meeting until our next meeting, which is March 21st at 10 a.m.
March 21st. Okay.
Thank you all.